So it was incredibly challenging when I got the email to say I was one of the few selected to walk with the Olympic torch. I started training and exercising to get out of the wheelchair for the first time and walk the 650 metres, and still to this day I say it's one of the biggest and best achievements of my life. Well, there is nobody like me in the world. Experts who tell me best practices, that the way I'm living my life probably isn't the most safest or conventional way. I sort of say, well, you guys have been studying it for 10 years, 20 years. I've been living it now for 43 years. If I get into the gym, I load up. Like yesterday, I had 120 kilos on the bar, 12 reps in one go, bang, bang, bang. That sort of short, sharp technique turns out, for me, typing on the computer is more dangerous than lifting weights in the gym. I've travelled all around Australia, over to New Zealand and the UK, sharing my story over the last 20 years. So basically anything from schools to Prime Minister's events to corporate events, you name it.
Awesome. How's the flex? From schools to Prime Minister's events. Just big scope. I like it.
Okay, well, my name is Dean Clifford. I'm a motivational speaker based out of Brisbane. I'm 43 years old. My friends would probably describe me as having a pretty bizarre sense of humour, but I'm incredibly sport-orientated and passionate person. About 20 years or so ago, I started travelling the world as a motivational speaker, which is a huge passion of mine. And then in my downtime, about 15 years or so ago, I got this crazy idea to become a weightlifter, and that's seen me transform myself from being one of the sickest and fragile people around to now one of the strongest in the world. And as you might have picked up, I've got an extremely rare genetic skin condition called Epidermolysis bullosa, which is an incredibly rare disease that even the medical world hasn't really heard of or understand of. Today, think there's only a handful of us as around the world with the most severe version, like myself, and I'm one of the oldest in the world that's surviving and living really well with this incredibly painful genetic skin condition. So that's sort of me in 30 seconds or so.
Geez, that's a good elevator pitch. Hank, thank you very much. You've done that before.
So let's break down the sports memorabilia, because are we looking at a Sydney 2000 torch in the background?
We are. I was very lucky to walk with the Olympic torch back in the year 2000. That was actually one of the first times anybody had seen me walk. Before that, I was basically wheelchair bound for growing up through the better part of my childhood and all through growing up, because the skin on my feet and on my legs is literally too fragile to be able to support my body weight or be able to support any sort of movement. To this day, I've still never walked on a blade of grass. To me, a blade of grass is sharper than a razor blade, so that would just go straight through the skin on my feet. So it was incredibly challenging when I got the email to say I was one of the few selected to walk with the Olympic torch. I started training and exercising like a crazy person to get out of the wheelchair for the first time and walk the 650 metres. And still to this day, I say it's one of the biggest and best achievements of my life. It's still one of the sort of brightest memories that I've got. I love it.
Good on you, brother. So is your skin difference, is that also make you like immunocompromised, or is it fully just about the extremities on the outside? What are some of the, I guess, differences that you have because of your disability?
Definitely immunocompromised. Basically, the easiest way I explain my skin is, imagine it's like a whole heap of bread stacked on top of each other. So I still have the same skin as everybody else, but I don't have the protein and the anchors that hold your skin together. So I sort of say, imagine like 10 pieces of bread stacked on top of each other. You can just flick out the middle layer if you want. There's no butter to hold the bread together. together, or another sort of way a lot of people describe it, it's sort of like Velcro that's, 50 years old that's lost its stick. So my skin still is there the same as everybody else, but even just moving my arms like this right now, that friction is supposed to work against each other. The layers just sort of work almost like sandpaper, sort of rubbing away at each other below the surface. So my skin, if I was to, go up the flight of stairs really quickly and miss the last step and trip over, my skin would just peel straight off, and then it's probably never going to heal again. It'll be a wound that I'll have, like I've got on my arms that I've had for 40 years now. Other times it'll be a problem that starts to surface on a sub-layer level, so I'll be able to tell just by looking at my skin that it's a bit discolored or there's something happening just below the surface. So then I'll have to use my favourite tool here, which is a scalpel, and you've got to just cut away at the skin on top of the surface to get to the problem below that might be starting to develop and form an infection on the sub-layers. So it's a whole process that you've got to be careful of sunlight, you've got to be careful of, pressure, handshakes, you've got to be careful of shoes or clothing that you wear, right through to then just be careful of what movement you do and how much activity you have, because just as I said, that's going to create an issue. The theory is simply breathing is too big of an issue for my body to be able to handle. So every single part of life you've got to be very aware of and adapt and think outside the square.
My daily routine, Dean, is probably about 7-8 minutes, and that includes getting home from the gym, having a shower, brushing my teeth, heading out the door. That's sort of, I don't use any sort of skin stuff. That's my routine. I can knock it out in 8 minutes.
How do you look so youthful if you don't use creams, Gus?
Mate, ever since having a kid, I've got crow's feet, no bags. My life's deteriorating. But for you, Dean, what's your daily routine look like when it comes to time spent doing these sort of observations?
So my day starts usually about 5 hours before everybody else. So in that time frame today, the alarm went off about 3:30 this morning. That means 5 hours in the morning to, as I said, literally check over every single part of my skin. It involves, like I said, using the scalpel or using the needles to sort of cut away at any blisters or any problems that might be starting to surface. Then it can be just about working out what I need to do, what I plan on doing today, then working out what I need to do to get my skin in the best possible condition. So it can be just moisturising to keep the skin soft and flexible, can be like drying it out so the skin gets a little bit coarser, depends on what areas of my body is playing up. Then it's about bandaging up the areas that already are affected, like my hands and my feet, the really high pressure, high movement areas. So I've got to bandage them all up. My nurses come usually around 5:30. So those first 2 hours in the day, I'm there just assessing everything myself, getting things prepared. And then when the nurses arrive, then I begin the process of bandaging my feet and my back, the parts that I physically can't reach. And then I take care of the hands. And as I said, from start to finish, it's about a 5 to 5.5 hour process. That happens every single day. So, back in the old days when I was working, I started my career in breakfast radio. So I'd have to be up at, midnight or 1 a.m. at times to get through the medical process before I got to work that day. Most of my co-workers and people that I work with, they had no idea about that. That's just my process that I sort of get on with. But it's kind of like a full-time job that a lot of people don't realise you've got to be very aware of literally every single part of my skin. Then I'm really lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones that I'm able to get on with my life and live my life very independently and have a really high quality of life. Unfortunately, still to this day, a lot of young children and young adolescents have to go through that process 2 or 3 times a day if their skin's really, really bad. But for me, I've got it worked out and got it sort of narrowed down to just that 5 hours in the morning. Then the medical room gets closed and I'm able to be as independent and as healthy as I want to be in my life. So
What happens if you like in the Arvo you stub your toe or you cut yourself or something happens? Is that where you independently get yourself right, or do you call someone in when something goes wrong?
yeah, I'm very resourceful. Quickly getting my shoe off and cutting away at the wounds and working out what I need to do. Because if something's left like that, if I sort of have an accident through the course of the day, that little wound or little problem that will just escalate over the course of an hour, 2 hours, or a few, or by the time the nurses come the next day.
Dean, we need to talk about the tool that is your everyday tool, the scalpel. Can you please describe for people who are maybe low vision or blind how you would describe your skin and potentially what you know it to be different to an able-bodied person like myself?
Yeah, so the way I describe my skin, it's kind of like tissue paper or like a tissue. So if you hold a tissue up and sort of start to tear it, it's just literally falls apart then, and it's very easy to sort of tear tissue in half and just shred it to pieces. So my skin, it's kind of along those lines. A lot of times it's described as like the wings of a butterfly, which is another reason why the not-for-profit association that supports myself and all the families often describe it as butterfly children, because our skin is as fragile as the wings of a butterfly. Just the slightest little, pressure can involve the skin tearing and splitting apart then. So my skin is very scarred, very disfigured. When I was growing up, I had no skin whatsoever on my face. You can still kind of see the scar outline right around my face when you're close in person. And so these days I'm really, really lucky that through a huge amount of work and amount of, experimental procedures and trial and error, I was able to get the skin on my face healed up really well now, what I class as really, really well anyway.
So if you feel that little grain of rice difference underneath the skin or you notice some discoloration, you then cut into your own skin with the scalpel to kind of diagnose it further?
Yeah, you sort of got to work out whether it's something that you can just treat topically, whether you can apply, as I said, different ointments or different creams to try to protect the skin that might be starting to break down on a sub level. Most of the time, like I said, it does involve using the scalpel, and you've just got to make the sort of careful incisions, kind of like peeling back layer by layer the different layers of skin to work out how deep you have to go to. Most of the time, you still strike the nerves. It's sort of something that you've got to go deep enough to be able to get to the area, open it all up, then apply the creams, whether it's the medicated creams or just the different sort of ointments that I've worked out works for my body, and then sort of working out whether I need to bandage it tightly to keep it firm and in place so there's no friction movement, or I need to bandage it loosely so there's that pressure, because even bandaging, like my hand is bandaged just similar to you would get done at a hospital. But if I bandage my hand too tight, the bandage will just go through my skin like, a knife through butter. So you've got to know the right amount of pressure to apply, the right amount of, potential friction that's going to occur, and sort of get that balancing act just right. So it's been a 43-year learning process, and something that still to this day, I have quite a few issues within the medical world, because as I say to a lot of the sort of quote unquote experts who tell me best practices, that the way I'm living my life probably isn't the most safest or conventional way. I sort of say, well, you guys have been studying it for 10 years, 20 years. I've been living it now for 43 years, and there's often a fair bit of conflict between me and the medical world who tell me that maybe I should be, seeking a simpler path or looking for easier options, but it's the way that I've worked out works really well for me. So it's the sort of way I live my life.
Have you got a thick bandage sponsor? You bloody need one.
Elastoplast. Hit us up.
My medical cupboard is bigger than just about any hospital. I've got, whenever I do have to go to hospital, I sort of say, have you got X, X, Y, Z? And they just look at me with a blank look on their face, and they've got no idea the quantities and the volumes that I use on a daily basis. So,
how did you go mentally and emotionally coming to terms with your disability and your skin difference? Was there time, especially when you were younger, that you really struggled? You seem like a pretty proud guy now, which is awesome to see. But what was that? What was that journey to get there?
yeah, the journey was incredibly difficult. I grew up in a very small country town in Kingaroy in Queensland, so it was very difficult. There is nobody like me in the world, and I've met quite a few people in Australia and internationally now living with EB, but for my age, unfortunately, there's very few of us in the world that have survived to be as old as I am. So I spent a lot of time sort of trying to mentally get my head around all that because sport just comes very, very naturally to me. So to sort of not be able to participate, even though I could sit there on the sideline and I could sort of call my cousin over and sort of say, dude, you're doing that wrong. Do it this way, do this. And he'd run out onto the field and do then what I was saying. And it was sort of like, oh, okay, yep, but I could never get out there and show them and do it myself. So that took many years to sort of work out what I was capable of doing, how much I could push myself. I think for me, the biggest thing was, getting out of the schooling system. My life expectancy literally was week to week all through up until about the age of 16, 17. And then it finally started to extend to month life expectancy. But just sort of getting out of that schooling system, there was no sort of opportunity for me to go to university or further my education. So for me, the biggest thing and the biggest sort of change in my life occurred when I finally finished school. I passed all my subjects. I still have no idea how that all happened, but I managed to pass all the subjects. Then I just started working in mainstream employment. As I said, my first job was in the country radio station. And so, working beside people that were 5, 10 years older than me, being a 16-year-old, you sort of started to work out, wait a minute, so-and-so's got a few family issues with their relationship, or this person's got a few other issues with whatever they were going through, and the sort of penny finally started to drop that everybody has their own issues in life. What I'm dealing with might be huge and important to me, but it's insignificant to someone else when they're dealing with their huge issues in their life. So it sort of started to, once I started to feel accepted and started to feel like a valued member of the community, then all those sort of struggles that I was dealing with started to sort of fade away, and I started to find my footing in the community and find my passions in life, and started to be able to focus on the good things rather than sort of sitting around watching everybody else do everything else that I couldn't do.
Dean, as a young child, as a young man, I wonder for you, a previous guest, Carly Finlay, spoke brilliantly to us about her disdain for Halloween because it perpetuates facial difference as scary or something to be scared of, especially in children. What are your thoughts on that opinion, especially as a kid growing up, like you said, without the skin on your face, and then, in October, all of a sudden, kids are wearing masks and maybe comparing them to you?
Yeah, honestly, I don't give that too much of a thought. I mean, if people want to, dress up, as long as they understand, a bit about the disability or the struggles that people go through, which I'm very happy to talk to just about anybody about. You can, the way I sort of think is, you can always tell when someone's genuinely interested to learn about your differences or your disability versus those that might just be a bit of an idiot trying to sort of make fun or whatever. So if you're that way inclined and you genuinely want to learn about me and want to learn about my facial differences, I'm more than happy to sit down. And if you want to wear a mask or something, I'm sort of like, well, you actually showing a little bit of breaking down a few barriers of what it's like in the real world. If somebody sort of makes fun of you or whatever the case may be, if you're sort of an idiot when you're out in a pub and someone's had a few too many drinks, then I'm more than happy to shoot someone down and sort of be as sarcastic as the next person and sort of able to turn any sort of situation usually around onto them and show how unintelligent or immature that they might be actually being, and it sort of puts them in a bad light, but it doesn't faze me at all. The genuine people, great. The disingenuous people, well, they don't even want a second of my time, and I don't give them a second of my thought.
Um, well, you're a pretty fit unit these days, as you said at the start. You've been spanking the weights. So why did you get into it? And how do you go lifting the weights with the pressure of the weight on your skin so it doesn't cut you, considering that you do have such thin skin that can be easily harmed?
Yeah, it's a really bizarre story to be, as I said, now one of the strongest in the world. When I started out, it started out very, very bizarrely. I was hanging out at a really good friend of mine. He used to play for the New Zealand All Blacks and the Australian Kangaroos, and Brad and I, we were just hanging out at his place. Brad was, 112 kilo professional rugby union player, and we got into the stupid competition to see who was stronger. And we were mucking around at his place, and Brad said, can you do 10 push-ups? And I was able to get some pillows and put pillows underneath my hands and sort of alleviate a bit of the pressure. And I was able to do 10 push-ups. Then he sort of said, what about doing 10 sit-ups? And the challenges just kept coming. We kept firing different challenges off. And so then a few days later, we were hanging out at the Broncos gym there. I'm an ambassador for the Brisbane Broncos, so I was hanging out in the gym at the Broncos training sheds there, and everybody had left the room. Brad and I were just sitting there talking about the upcoming game, and Brad sort of said to me that the trainer walked over and threw Brad the keys and said, "Lock up when you're done." And so Brad sort of said he couldn't understand how I was able to work out different techniques and different things to be able to protect my hands and protect, the weak areas of my body and still do everything. So he said, there's nobody in the gym here now. Do you want to go into the Broncos gym and I'll make sure nothing falls on you, nothing hits you. Let's just get in there and see what you're capable of doing. And that first day I lifted my body weight on the bench press, and we all just sort of stood around and sort of worked out that there was no damage to my hands. And so after doing a lot of research and working out a lot of different things, it turns out for me, typing on the computer is more dangerous than lifting weights in the gym, because for me it's the repetitive motion of tapping away at a keyboard for hours on end, or holding the pencil and writing for hours. Whatever I do, if I do it over the course of a long period of time, that's just going to wear down the sub layers and the main layers of my skin, and sort of damage my skin. But if I get into the gym, I load up. Like yesterday, I had 120 kilos on the bar. I load the gym up with the weight, and I lay down and just have do 10 reps, or the maximum I do is about 12 reps. Just 12 reps in one go, bang, bang, bang. That sort of short, sharp technique, then racking it, walking away, going and doing some leg exercises, that doesn't give the skin enough time to sort of get really damaged on a sub layer level. So I've got to be very careful about not having the weights bump into me and things like that. How I hold the weights and things like that. But that an average gym program is usually about 2 hours training in the gym, 3 to 4 times a week.
I feel the same thing when I'm benching 120 reps of 12. I just feel like I get in there, kind of bust it out.
You just start to feel that burn.
Yeah, I could go up to 200 kilos, but I'm like, I was going to just chill on 120. What about you, Gus? What are you benching?
Yeah, easy day,
Easy day, yeah.
Oh, if I'm not getting spotted, yeah, somewhere. I mean, to be honest, 120 is not too far from my body weight. So.
Yeah,
No, I don't get spotted.
man.
No, mate, it's an incredible feat, regardless of the fact that your skin is like tissue paper, and that's unbelievable. So thanks for sharing that. Dean, we do a thing called the Bowl of Uncomfortable. The Bowl of Uncomfortable is a segment where we get sent in questions. So these questions are from listeners who know that you're going to be a future guest. And so they've sent it to us either anonymously or through our socials. This one from me, I'll kick it off, is a personal one. So it's one that somebody's put their name to. It actually comes from YouTube. We had an email through our YouTube, so make sure you subscribe. Dean says, you've nearly doubled the life expectancies of those with your condition. What is it like seeing your friends made in your life with the same diagnosis pass away, and how does that make you feel about your own mortality?
It's really, really difficult. Unfortunately, just a couple of weeks ago, another young friend of mine, Lisa, passed away. Who she was actually a few years older than me, and that's incredibly difficult to sort of get my head around. That I'm still. I continue to get healthier and get stronger. Obviously, I still have issues pop up from time to time, and different things arise that sort of set me back a little bit. But overall, I've been out of the medical world for probably 25 years, if not longer, just sort of living my life and ticking off all the milestones. And it's really, really difficult when I know of other people health deteriorating and their skin starting to stop them from doing the things that they love, or they're starting to develop a lot of other secondary complications. And unfortunately, still to this day, a lot of the time it's the secondary stuff that occurs through all the severe skin trauma and skin damage that takes people's lives. And that's something that, as I said, still to this day, I really, really struggle with. It's something that I just try to make sure I live my life to the highest possible level and honour those that have passed away and honour those that are still fighting the really good fight, hang out with those as much as I can and try to sort of give them as much of a different perspective on life to sort of enjoy life and live life to its fullest, rather than sort of dwell on the negatives and sort of listen too much to everything that's going to go wrong, which, still to this day, the medical world doesn't always, sit that well with me. They tend to look for preventing things and worst case scenarios. I always say the hospitals is the worst place you'd ever want to be based in for any long length of time. So I try to just encourage people to get out, live life, experience life, see what opportunities they can uncover, see what passions that they can get. And if it's, a long life like myself, then make sure it's a really fun, quality life. If it's a short life, jam as much as you can into that time and make it really fun and quality, rather than sort of sitting back stressing about, what potential problems might occur and what might be happening to your skin on any given day.
I think so, mate. Thank you very much for your time, Dean. We do really appreciate it. You actually requested from a very good friend of mine, Matty Bevilacqua. He's one of my best mates, and he told me about your story many times, and he's been hounding me to get you on. I actually texted him this morning and said you were on. He goes, "No way! Finally, it took you 3 months." Well, it didn't take us 3 months to get you on. It was just the way to make it happen. So, thanks for sharing your story. We really do appreciate it, and hopefully, you're spreading a little bit more about epidermolysis bullosa, or as butterfly kids. Is EB and butterfly kids?
Very close. It's Epidermolysis bullosa, but yeah, commonly known as butterfly children or cotton wool babies. Yep.
And before we let you go, brother, you do a lot of motivational speaking. Very quickly, tell us a bit about that and where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on just about all the social media platforms. I've got my own website, deanclifford.com, and yeah, basically anything from schools to Prime Minister's events to corporate events, you name it. I've travelled all around Australia, over to New Zealand and the UK, sharing my story over the last 20 years. So it's great fun. I'd love to do working with you, Dylan, or anyone at all that wants to get in touch, and I'm more than happy to share my story.
Yeah, not a bad one.
Awesome. How's the flex from schools to Prime Minister's events? just big scope. I like it. Oh, good on you, brother. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Nice one. Dean Clifford, thanks for your time.
Cheers, no worries.